Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson standing by in New Hampshire. You've been there covering this trial in court. Tell us the latest in this trial specifically. I know that testimony from the mom of Adam's wife, Kayla Montgomery. What stood out to you?
Big testimony today. Nice to see you both. So we had Christina Lubin that was on the stand. She is the mother of Kayla Montgomery, Kayla being the estranged wife of this defendant, Adam Montgomery, who was on the stand for 2 days. And her testimony was critical for the state's case because she identified the red cooler that was in her house that Adam allegedly hid Harmony's body in. When she was questioned about that on the stand, here's what she said.
At some point, did police come to see you at your home to ask you questions about Harmony's disappearance?
Yes.
And later on, did you agree and allow them to do a search of your home relative to that investigation?
Yes, I don't remember them actually searching the home, but they were free to come in and do whatever they like.
Do you know why they took the cooler?
I had a suspicion.
Christina Lubin was also asked about all of the power tools in her house, which allegedly were used by Adam Montgomery in the disposal of his daughter's body. Now, she didn't answer any questions about the relationship of her daughter the last time that she saw her or how she prepared for her testimony. So I tried asking those questions when she left the stand. Take a listen. How are you holding up during all of this?
I have no comment.
What do you think about the case so far and the accusations that your daughter had played a bigger role? Talk to me about testifying today. Was it tough to be up there? When's the last time you saw Harmony?
Excuse me.
When's the last time you spoken to your daughter? All right, her daughter up for parole in just a couple months, not answering our questions, and also not facing his jury for a 5th day in a row of his trial. Adam Montgomery, an empty chair in court today. This jury not seeing his reaction to Kayla's mom on the stand or Kayla.
All right, Matt, we heard fiery testimony today from Montgomery's drug dealer, or he dealt drugs to them a number of times, Anthony Bordero. Can you tell us about his testimony?
His testimony very interesting because remember, the Montgomerys went and stayed in his parking lot of his apartment building, but again, he couldn't remember that. He was questioned about his Audi that the family lived in after their Sebring had been towed away after it broke down. Here's what he said on the stand.
And you said that you never saw Harmony.
I never did.
And that you didn't go down there.
Let's go. When did I not see Harmony? You're just saying I didn't see Harmony, but where? When?
At the Colonial Village.
No.
You're saying you never waved to Harmony.
Never.
Never waved to the boys. Overruled.
I'm telling you, she wasn't in the car. How can I wave to someone that's not in the car? I want to help you guys.
Who?
The prosecution helped find who killed that little girl.
And that was that fiery moment that this jury is, of course, thinking of today. So he was also questioned about his memory, getting some dates, maybe confused. And then the defense team also really drove home the point that he's a convicted felon. They showed other times to the jury affidavits when he was convicted of other crimes. They talked about his criminal record and immunity for testifying. Michael, Judge Ashley.
All right. We also know, Matt, that most of today's testimony was focused on the search of Adam Montgomery's vehicle. Tell us a little bit about what they found.
Yeah, that 2010 Chrysler Sebring that broke down at Webster and also Elm, and really is a critical key piece of evidence for this particular crime that we're talking about, because remember, Harmony was beaten in the back of that car, according to the state, and then her body stuffed in that duffel bag in the trunk of the car. Well, several police officers testified today as they searched that car for trace evidence of blood. Here's part of that critical testimony.
It took a while to process this car, right?
Yes, it did.
And you applied the Blue Star in the manner specified to you in the instruction manual?
Yes.
And there was no positive reaction.
That's correct.
No positive reaction on the steering column,
Correct.
steering wheel,
Correct.
driver's seat,
Correct.
the entirety of the passenger seat,
Correct.
or the center console.
That's correct.
And that's what you documented in your report.
Yes.
Possible trace evidence in the trunk, but not in the cab of the car. That was his testimony. Then there was the moment when the detective held up the toothbrush believed to be Harmony Montgomery's toothbrush. That's going to be key for this case because that's how they get the DNA profile to test it against other pieces of evidence that we're going to hear about in this very disturbing case involving this missing little girl.
Yeah, very disturbing. A lot of little details provided by each individual witness. Thank you, of course, Matt Johnson. So appreciate your great reporting. Still joining us for this hour, criminal defense attorney Joe Tamburino. And Joe, I want to start with just an observation because so many times we see defendants being interviewed again and again and again and again and going on the media and talking. Here's a witness, though, the mother of Kayla Montgomery, Christina Lubin. She testified, but then you saw she did not want to say anything to Matt, and that's a little unusual. I find that often witnesses and even defendants want to talk.
They do want to talk. I mean, many times they'll come out of court and start talking to the media, and we see that across the country. I think it's very common with witnesses. On the other hand, you know, this particular witness, her daughter is in a lot of trouble, or was in a lot of trouble. She's, you know, serving time for a perjury charge, obviously in a very precarious position. So perhaps she doesn't want to talk because it directly affects her daughter.
You know, Joe, we just heard that there was really nothing found in the car forensic-wise. No blood found in the car. Not that big of a deal, really, in this case. Your thoughts? Because at the end of the day, this wasn't a murder that involved a bloody crime scene, at least according to what Kayla has told this jury.
That's correct. And, you know, when we talked about this before, it's a circumstantial evidence case. But under the law, circumstantial evidence can be used by a jury just as they use direct evidence. They could give it equal weight. And what the state is doing is methodically trying to put the pieces together. Yes, there's no actual direct evidence that he, in fact, you know, killed this poor girl in the car or in some specific location. But boy, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that would point toward his guilt. I think it's a very difficult case for the defense.
And let me get you to weigh in, Joe. Michael and I have talked about this. We've had other guests who have joined in the conversation. What is your take on the fact that the defendant, we know, is asked every morning, does he want to come to court? No. If he says no, then no transport has to be sent to pick him up. He has not been in court since the very first day of jury selection, so part of the jury's never even seen him.
It's horrible for the defense. I mean, think of it this way. A jury is always thinking, my God, you have someone who's charged with a horrific crime. And if they are innocent, or if they're trying to show that they're innocent, wouldn't they have a stake in this trial? Wouldn't they be interested enough to be in the courtroom so they could see the evidence? Maybe they could testify if they wished. But if you're not interested in your own case, if you're disinterested to such a degree that you're simply going to let this trial go on without viewing anything, I think it's a terrible sign for the defense.
Yeah, especially at least show up for the person who's, you say, or at least the defense is saying did it, when they're going to testify and say you did it, be there to confront that person at least face-to-face in the courtroom. But here's what I want to ask you, and I want to piggyback on the judge's question. His claim is that he's required to be strip searched every time he comes to court. Now, he's in prison for some other charges. He's not in a county jail at the moment. He's in prison. Does that sound right to you? I mean, it sort of raises red flags to me that in order for someone to exercise their right, again, they're innocent till they're proven guilty of these charges, they have to go through a strip search?
Well, it depends. I mean, it all depends on the locality. There are many situations where, you know, in some local jails, in some prisons, where they do have special rules about what type of security or searching you have to go through when you come in and out of a courtroom. Because let's face it, even though it's a courtroom and even though everyone is supposed to obey the laws about contraband, sometimes things can be passed or slipped to someone who's going into custody. So I don't think it's a violation of his Sixth Amendment right. And I think it's a fairly weak excuse not to show up for court.
Yeah, I'm shocked he's not there. I bet his attorneys have tried to say, yeah, you need to be in court.
Strip searches are very invasive. I don't know. It just bothers me, Joe. I just got to say, if that was an issue with my client, I'd have a problem with it.
And that's what I would think too. If there was really that issue, you would think the attorneys would be fighting that, et cetera, et cetera. So
and again, we're not 100% certain
Right.
if that's the case. This is what he's saying. We did some checking. Matt did some checking. Apparently, that first day it was the case. We're not sure if it's been the case
every other day.
since.
Right,
Yeah.
right, absolutely.